I walk into the living room to give my wife the news. The courts are closed for 3 weeks due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As a trial lawyer who only makes money when I'm in court doing cases, I'm freaking out on the inside. And I'm probably freaking out on the outside too, because if you've ever played poker with me, you know I have a terrible poker face. We are blessed with a thriving law firm. I have lots of clients who we take care of day in and day out, but as a trial lawyer, we only earn income when I go to court and handle cases. So how are we going to keep the cash flow rolling if the courts are closed for 3 weeks? My wife helps calm me down and helps me realize that 3 weeks isn't that long. We're going to be okay, and we're going to be able to make things work for 3 weeks. Not a big deal. But then the governor announces the shutdown is going to continue. The courts continue their closure, and we're going to be looking at 3 months potentially of shutdown. And now I'm really freaking out. 3 weeks is a period of time that hopefully most any backup plan can survive. But 3 months, now we're talking some serious time that will really test whether our emergency funds are in place and going to take care of us like they're supposed to. To try to help calm myself down and figure out how we're going to make this work, I sit down at my desk and I create a spreadsheet. I'm a nerd. I love spreadsheets. They help me figure things out. And so I'm putting all the cash flow from the law firm, what little money may still be coming in, what expenses are going to be going out, rent and payroll. I certainly don't want to have to lay any employees off during this time. So I figure out how much the law firm is going to be in the red without any cases coming through. Then we figure out personal cash flow, what other little income we may have from personal expenses and personal endeavors, and then what all the personal bills and utilities and mortgage and all those payments. And we figure out what's going to be the normal monthly red number that we're going to have to take care of. Then we look at what all the savings and CDs and the emergency funds are in place and try to figure out, is it going to be enough and what kind of damage it's going to do to the emergency fund to be able to withstand potentially 3 months of a shutdown. As I'm putting together the last few spots of the spreadsheet, I asked St. Joseph to help me. St. Joseph's my man. He helps keep me calm, and he's come through in many a pinch. And now more than ever, we definitely need the intercession of the saints to help us get through crazy times like this. I project the numbers for 3 months because that's what we expect the shutdown is going to be at this point. And then I also went ahead for good measure and projected it out for 6 months in case, who knows, I never thought courts would close for this long to begin with. Maybe they'll be closed for 6 months. I total up the numbers and look down at the total on the Excel spreadsheets and see 3 months, we're in great shape. 6 months, we're in pretty good shape still. The emergency funds that we have in place work. We have enough funds to survive and actually be doing well at the end of even a 6-month shutdown of no cash flow. This is what emergency funds are for. This is what we prepare for, is for sudden, unexpected emergencies. As a 38-year-old, pretty healthy man, I always thought that what I would need my emergency fund for, at least in the foreseeable future, is for some kind of sudden accident or some kind of crazy illness that may come down on me where I personally was unable to work and was unable to take care of my family. I never thought, ever, that there would come a time when the government would say, you can't work. I never thought that day would happen, but it did on March 16th of this year when the governor of Virginia essentially forced everyone to close down. The Supreme Court made their own ruling, but it was at the recommendation or suggestion of the governor. So I never thought that I would need my emergency fund for a situation like this, but that's exactly what emergency funds are for, is for unexpected emergencies. You never know what's going to happen. But on March 16th of this year, the Supreme Court shut down my business. The governor of Virginia ordered us to stay home. My income was cut off. I was healthy and able to work, mentally sharp, wanted to work, but I couldn't. This is what emergency funds are for. You simply never know what emergency may be coming down the pike and when you might need your emergency fund. What about you? Do you have a sufficient emergency fund? Are you in good shape through this pandemic lockdown? I'm recording this in June and things are starting to open back up, but a lot of people may still have income that's been disrupted and may still be out of work at this point, depending on what sector you worked in. How are you faring at this point? As Christians, we have a duty to be good stewards of the time, talent, and treasures that God has entrusted with us here on this earth. Everything's a gift from God. Our ability to work, the money that we earn through our work, our wonderful families that we may be privileged to be part of, And it's our duty to take care of those resources, to invest them wisely, to protect them, and to help them grow. They're God's resources, they're God's treasures. We're just the steward while we're here on this earth. How are you being a good steward of your resources? Are you planning for the future? Are you planning for sudden unexpected emergencies that may come your way, like a global pandemic? Who knows when the next one might come? It's kind of frightening how quickly things shut down and ground to a halt when this pandemic struck back in March. So another pandemic could come around the corner at any time, and the world could shut down again, and you need to be ready. If you drive a fancy car, take fancy vacations, and eat out frequently, yet you don't have an emergency fund, you need to stop it. You need to change your lifestyle choices. I'm not trying to be too judgmental here, but frankly, as Christians, it's also our duty to help instruct each other and to help each other understand how to do better. We should be doing better. We should be having the wherewithal to plan for the future, to be prepared for unexpected emergencies that may come up. Maybe it's simply a 1 month without a job. Maybe you lose a job and it takes a few weeks to get yourself a new job. Any emergency fund that you should have should get your family through that with ease. Now, if you're out of work for several months, that gets to be a little trickier. However, you got to start somewhere, starting to establish an emergency fund to be able to get through these tough times. So if you're watching this video and you have no emergency fund right now, what do? Well, first of all, if you're not working, you gotta first of all cut expenses to the bone. If you have no income and no emergency fund, you shouldn't be having cable TV, you shouldn't be getting takeout, you shouldn't be doing all sorts of things that some people are doing. So that's your first step. If you're beyond that step, hopefully you have a job right now and you have income, what do you need to do next? If you have no emergency fund, your first goal is a $1,000 emergency fund. Now, this may seem like a lot of money if you're not a saver, if you have never had any kind of savings or emergency funds, but you can do it. $1,000 is enough to help give a little bit of cushion. So if you have that one little hiccup, you can be a little more secure by just starting with $1,000. And it's a good number to get your head around, and you'll see some progress. So how do you get that first $1,000? Well, that's where you can start cutting some small things. Maybe you can look at your monthly bills. Maybe you can figure out how to downgrade your entertainment expenses. If you're a person who goes to the movies, well, you're not going to the movies right now, so try to save that money into an emergency fund. The same thing with eating out. You can do without eating out for a few months. None of us have been to inside restaurants, at least since March, and so maybe you can figure out a way to simply not eat out, sacrifice for a few more months, and try to put that money away into an emergency fund. If you don't have an emergency fund and you have a vacation, frankly, of any kind on the calendar, you need to cancel it. And you need to take that money and put it aside for an emergency fund. If you don't have a good sized emergency fund, frankly, you shouldn't be going on vacations. Now, a staycation at home is one thing. Take a little time off from work, relax and recharge. That's great. But you shouldn't be spending lots of money going to Disney World or places like that. If you don't have $1,000 set aside as an emergency fund, you need to make cuts. No more eating out, no more TV, no more vacations. You need to cut out all the luxuries in your life until you save up that $1,000. And then you'll really be getting somewhere with your emergency fund. Once you hit that $1,000 mark, now you're really starting to make some progress. So what do you do next? Well, you need to try to save up 1 month's worth of living expenses. So sit down and map out what it would cost to run your household for a month if you had no income. These are some calculations that I did when the pandemic struck, trying to figure out exactly what it's going to cost each month. To keep the bills paid, keep the lights on, keep the mortgage paid. So sit down and run those numbers. Now, it may be a big number, and now's a good time maybe to say, wow, do we really need to be spending all this stuff? Maybe you need to make some cuts there. But at the very least, that gives you a new target. So you've got $1,000 in the bank set aside. Now try to do even better. A month is a good amount of time. If you have 1 month of expenses set aside, ready to go in case of emergency, you can withstand a lot of problems. You could withstand a short job loss. You could withstand some kind of illness that makes it where you can't work or where you don't want to work. Maybe a child gets sick and you need to take some unpaid time off. A month gives you some flexibility and some options. And now you've distanced yourself from catastrophe. You've got this cushion that will help protect you and your family in times of need. One thing we haven't talked about is where do you put this emergency fund? So you're getting some substantial money. I would recommend you open a savings account that's not at your normal bank. You want to make it a little bit hard to access the money. It needs to be available, but it would be good if it's not something that's just tied there right next to your checking account that you're seeing all the time when you're logging onto your bank's app on your phone or your online banking. So I would recommend get yourself a separate bank account. Some of the online banks have decent interest rates, like 1% right now, but that's better than your brick and mortar local bank's probably going to do. So get yourself an online bank account and get that emergency fund established. Start with $1,000. If you have no savings, $1,000 is your target for right now. And don't worry about the rest. Start with $1,000. That's the target. Once you get to that $1,000 number, you start to have some freedom and you start to see that you can do this, that some of these sacrifices that you thought were going to be crazy difficult, they're not so difficult anymore. Maybe you don't really care to eat out anymore. Maybe you're okay delaying that vacation for a little while. Then get to 1 month's living expenses. Now you're not trying to replace your income for the month. You're trying to cover your expenses for a month. So that number should be lower than your income. So get to 1 month of expenses, including your mortgage, your bills, your food, your gas, everything that you would need to spend in a month to survive and to live, and have that money set aside. For today's video, that's the goal. Ultimately, in the future, you really want to extend that to 3 to 6 months, depending upon your income, your family's needs, and things like that. But 1 month of expenses is way more than most Americans have, frankly. If you can do that, you're going to be way ahead of the curve, and you're going to help protect your family in the future. Remember, as Christians, it's our duty to protect our families. It's our duty to be good stewards of resources God's blessed us with, and having an emergency fund is a simple start on doing that. If you didn't have one when the pandemic hit, now's the time to establish one. You don't want to be caught off guard again, and I guarantee many people were, and don't let that be you in the future. And as always, St. Joseph, pray for us.